Hi, I'm Dennis Edwards, Dean of North Park Theological Seminary in Chicago.
Dean Edwards. Dennis, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, we're wearing the same color shirt today.
We are. I noticed that.
That it must mean something good, right? Something good. Now you're up in Chicago. It's wintertime. Is it frigid, kind of crazy cold up there?
It is cold, and we even had snow today,
Oh, you
but
did.
it
Okay,
goes with the territory.
it does. And you'll when we're doing 98 degrees in August, you'll be 78 in August and low
Yeah.
humidity. So
Yeah,
you
well.
pay for it one way or another, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Yeah. Hey, listen, how did you get started? You're a New Testament guy.
I am.
How did you get started reading Greek?
Well, I went to seminary in my late 20s at the urging of a pastor. I was really nervous about doing it. I didn't have a humanities background, I have an engineering degree. So I was really nervous. But when I took that first Greek class, I realized I really enjoyed it. And I have enjoyed taking other languages in my lifetime. So I enjoyed it and I had intended to stick with it, even if I didn't pursue a doctorate. But as the Lord would have it, I got to pursue a doctoral degree. And even the Greek I had taken years earlier was still with me for the most part, and I
Yeah,
was
that's
able
good.
to continue on in my doctoral studies.
Was there any particular book or professor that helped you along the way? You felt, oh gosh,
Ah,
that is
I'm
really.
I'm going to name drop a couple of people. I went to Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in the mid '80s, and Scott McKnight was one of my professors.
Oh,
I
okay.
have a, and so was Grant Osborne for my exegesis classes. My basic Greek was taught by a teaching assistant, but those two professors taught me exegesis in a summer class. I do have a quick funny story about Scott McKnight.
Good, good. We
He
like
was
funny
he was
stories about Scott. Yes,
he was
particularly
in
Scott.
class. Yes. Well, in class he was explaining something about Greek and he said the Greek of Mark is straightforward. He said like a Midwesterner. He said Luke is fancy. He said like an East Coast person, probably went to Cornell. He said it just like that. And I jumped in and I said, that's my alma mater. I said, are you picking on my alma mater? And he seemed a little surprised. He said, you went to Cornell? I said, yeah. And then we had these conversations afterwards, and it turns out I really did really well in that class. And I credit Scott with planting in my mind the thought that I could do a doctorate, which I
Uh,
didn't even know I would have the aptitude or time or whatever. And Scott really encouraged me. So I always give him credit for sparking the interest. And we have, in fact, in that class with him, we were reading Gospels. With Grant Osborne, we were actually reading First Peter in the exegesis classes. So those two professors, I give a lot of credit for
um,
my interest in Greek.
those are tremendous scholars and friends
Hmm.
and everything. We mourn Grant's passing,
Indeed,
a little while
indeed,
back and everything. But
exactly.
now today we are going to talk about First Peter chapter
That's right.
5, and I don't
Hmm.
know, maybe Grant planted that idea within you years ago. But tell us what's going on, Doctor Edwards, in First Peter chapter 5.
Well, Peter's starting to wrap up the letter. It's the last chapter, and he's given instructions to different groups of people. And he starts out with the elders, and then he talks to the younger folks, and he gives some final words of encouragement and instruction to them. I like how chapter 5 opens because he appeals to what he calls his fellow elders. He's an elder himself, but he appeals as a witness of the sufferings of Christ. I find that interesting. He doesn't say,
Mm.
"Hey, I met the resurrected Jesus and we had this long conversation, by the lakeshore." He says, "No, I saw the suffering of Jesus." And so he can appeal to a congregation that's going through suffering
Mm.
by saying you have a savior who understands suffering.
Yeah, no, that's terrific.
Hmm.
Now, in verse 5, which is where we're going to spend a few minutes, he's
Hmm.
he's talking to likewise you who are younger, be subject to
Hmm.
the elders. But
Yep.
then it's what he says next that really fascinates
Right.
you, right?
It does. I like this image. He says, all of you, so this is the whole community of believers. He says, clothe yourselves with humility.
Mm,
Now, at another time, we could talk about humility because that was not a virtue in the Greco-Roman world. Yet Peter and Paul and gospel writers celebrate humility,
mm,
but it's the clothe yourself that was intriguing to me.
mm,
Now, it's a verb in the middle voice, and middle voices often are reflexive. So the idea of you're doing this, you're putting the clothes on just like you get dressed in the morning, you clothe yourself. But he uses an interesting word. It's the only time it appears in the whole New Testament. Those kinds of things are
Ah,
intriguing to me.
yes.
And so this only time this word appears, and it's a verb that appears outside of the New Testament in a noun form. We mostly see it as a noun. So the word enkambaomai is the verb, and the noun would be enkamboma, and that's a
Hmm.
garment, typically describing a garment that a slave would wear. So this enslaved
Ah.
person would wear an enkamboma. And so Peter is taking this image of how an enslaved person would put an apron or this garment on, and he says, in essence, apron yourself. And you do apron
Hmm.
yourself with humility. So you see the image, it's one already of service,
Yes.
right? Because just like that enslaved person is serving, and then you're serving with humility. So it's a state of mind, a state of being as well that he's appealing to. And the thing that I found intriguing is that you almost can't help but to think of Jesus in John 13, where he's washing the disciples' feet. It says he
Ah.
gets up and he wraps a towel around himself. Now it's a different word, but it's the same kind of image of wrapping a towel
Wrapping
and
yourself.
do
Yeah.
right, and then doing the menial work, right, of
Hmm.
of washing of feet. So it's almost as if Peter could be recollecting that night, perhaps. I mean, remember the one who had the hardest time with this whole episode was Peter. He
Yeah,
did. He
that's
said, "Jesus,
right.
don't wash my feet." And Jesus says, "Well, I have to wash your feet." And Peter says, "Well, wash all of me." He says, "No, I don't have to wash all of you." But he says, "You don't understand, but one day
Uh,
you will understand." And hey, maybe Peter got to the place where he understood, and he understands that this image is about the one another, right?
mm,
It's
hmm.
serving each other, but you're wrapping yourself around with humility so you can serve one another. I find that an enriching kind of an image there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful image that
Mhm.
comes, and that is what we often refer to as a hapax legomena,
Yes, thank you for saying
a
that. That's
word
right.
that's only occurring in the New Testament text itself one time, and so
Right.
we have to look to other sources to sort of figure out what the word means, right?
That's right. And Peter happens to use a fair number of hapax legomena. And so it's kind of intriguing when you find an author is using language that you don't see frequently. It also suggests that, there's a whole Greco-Roman world that this person is immersed in, and not just, say, like borrowing language from Paul or something like that.
Hmm.
In other words, it's this own author's, or at least this author with whomever else he's working with, Silas in this case, who are working with their world, their context. It's a
Hmm.
reminder to us that authors are working out of their context and not just rehashing words from other people. So yeah, I
Mm.
find it kind of intriguing whenever you see a one-time occurrence, a hapax legomena.
So apron yourself. I like that translation. Apron
Me
yourself
too.
in humility. And
Yeah.
I think of my grandmother putting on an apron and going into the kitchen and serving and baking and making wonderful food. But she was just the thing that you would see is you would see the apron. You wouldn't
Yes.
see you wouldn't see the clothes that she might be wearing, or the jewelry she might be wearing underneath it, or the belt she might be
Ooh.
wearing. You would just see the humility. So
Oh, that's rich, David. I hadn't actually even thought about that
yeah,
because when you put the apron on, it's what's being presented up front.
right.
And if humility is the thing that's being presented, that really sets a nice tone. I mean, because he'll go on to say his rationale is that, and he quotes here from the Septuagint, which
Mm-hmm.
also is kind of helpful for us Greek readers to know that the New Testament writers are quoting from the Septuagint, that God is opposed to the proud
Mm-hmm.
but gives grace, shows favor to the humble. So he
Yes,
appeals to Proverbs 3, I think it's 34, Proverbs 3:34,
that's
to
right.
make his case. So that's what I like the way you have that image. The apron is what you see. So
Yeah.
humility is that thing that should be seen. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. This is great. Listen, we got to get you back on, and we want to talk about humility next time.
I would love to. I'm actually writing a book on it. So hopefully I'm excited about it.
Well, I hope you become an expert in humility, if
Me
if
too.
if that's possible. I don't know how that would work, but anyway, you're humble enough. Dr. Dennis Edwards, thanks for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
Thank you. It really has been a pleasure.
If you learned too much today and your head is hurting, there is one sure cure. That is to share this podcast with a friend. If you've never visited Wheaton College, I hope you'll make plans to do so. We have a wonderful campus all year round. And if biblical languages are your fancy, check out the MA and the BA program at Wheaton College. You can go to wheaton.edu, look for modern and classical languages. Get started today. This is the day you want to do it, right? If you have questions or comments, if you just want to be in touch, please email us at exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks to all those who make this podcast possible. You know who you are. Until next time, thanks for listening.